Hello everyone, this is a screencast video recording for Learning Targets 5.3 and 5.2, which cover calculating net force. Net force is the total force acting on an object when we add all of the different forces together. There's a four-step process that I will use to calculate net force. You don't necessarily have to follow this four-step process, but it is one that will lead to you making less mistakes when calculating net force in the future. So step one of this process says that we need to calculate all forces moving east and west. So I'm looking for any arrows that are pointing east or west having to do with this object. Right here I see an arrow that is pointing west, and it's for 20 newtons. And right here I see an arrow that is pointing east, 50 newtons. So to calculate all forces moving east and west, I basically need to decide, do I add these forces together or do I subtract them from each other? And it's a very simple answer. I add them together if they're working together. I subtract them if they're working against each other. In this case, since they're moving different directions, they're working against each other. So 50 minus 20 newtons leaves us with 30 newtons, and those are pointing to the east. You can see here that this 50 newtons is a stronger force. The arrow is longer and it's moving east, so this object has a total force east to west of 30 newtons east. Step two. Calculate all forces moving north and south. Well, I don't see any forces moving north and south. There are no arrows pointing north or south, so that's going to be a 0. Step 3, I'm going to add all of them together. So 30 newtons east plus 0 equals 30 newtons east. Number 4, so that's our net force. So this is our answer here, but we're also going to continue on and describe which direction this object will move. So number 4 basically says, based on our net force here for number 3, where I put the star, write the direction of motion based on that. So since the net force is in this direction here, that's going to be the direction of the motion. So east. And that is how we calculate net force and predict the motion that an object will move based on net force. But let's go ahead and try a couple more. So here we have a guy pushing a couch, and we see that there are 3 different forces acting upon the couch. Number 1, what are the east-west forces? Well, I see an arrow pointing west. I don't see anything over here on this side. This one's pointing down, this one's pointing up, so I only see this one force for the east-west forces, and it's 500 newtons pointing to the west. Number 2, the forces that are pointing up or down, north or south. Well, I see one here pointing north, I see one here pointing south. It appears as though they are working against each other, so if I subtract 100 from 100, I actually end up with 0. So north-south forces cancel each other out. The third thing I do is I add all of these together for 1 and 2 to get my net force. I end up with 500 newtons west. And that is going to help me determine the motion of the object. So the motion based on the net force is going to be west, because we have an unbalanced force pushing the object to the west. So the guy is going to move the couch to the left or to the west. Let's go ahead and try just one more example. So here we have a rocket ship, and again we're going to follow our 4 steps. Calculate the forces moving east and west. Well, I don't see any. There aren't any forces going east or west like you see these. So that's a 0. Number 2, the north-south forces. Well, I see a northern force here. This is north, and I see south here. So if the north force has 1,000 newtons of magnitude and the south force has 300 newtons of magnitude, and they're working against each other, I'm going to need to subtract 1,000 newtons minus 300 newtons. and that gives us 700 newtons of force in the direction of the stronger force, which is north. So the answer to number 2 is 700 newtons north. So for number 3, my net force is going to be to add these two together, and if I have 0 and 700 newtons north, it's very easy. It's 700 newtons north, because that's all that's left over. And then for number 4, the direction of motion of the rocket, what is the prediction of where the rocket will move based on the net forces? Well, I base it on the net force direction, and the direction of the net force is north. So this rocket will move to the north. That's how we calculate net force. If you need any extra assistance, please see your instructor. Good luck.